The baby.
Yeah, there you go. So, so what is your name?
Name's Roisin Murphy. I'm from Castleknock in Dublin, near the Phoenix Park. Anyway, went to normal school, everything did well, worked for a future I thought I had in this country, was working as a childminder, 14, 15. Started working in Duns at 18, got my first choice in college. Actually studying civil law, hopefully to help women with domestic violence and refugees and human rights, and now I can't even finish my degree because I'm on the streets after domestic violence and I don't have family support and I'm in emergency accommodation, and me and my child were sleeping rough and on the streets for my whole pregnancy, on and off. I was groomed on the streets. A needle never touched my arm, thank God, nothing went up my nose, but people would say anything about you, and literally everything. You can't sleep anymore, you can't eat anymore. Like, you're not even safe going to homeless services or hospitals or guards, like, do you know what I mean?
So that's Roisin Murphy. Roisin is an old name for Ireland, as it happens. Roisin Dove, Black Roisin, but she's Roisin Young, white Roisin, blonde Roisin. She raises a lot of issues to do with this so-called homeless crisis in Ireland. They go from the supply and demand situation right across to the social dimension and to those who are helping to solve the problem and those who are pouncing off the problem. So there's a lot to cover. If we look at it at supply and demand and scammers, we see that the government is building all these little rabbit hutches all over the place. Now, the biggest company in Ireland is CRH, which is very heavily connected into all the major political parties. So when any house or apartment is built, CRH get a cut out of it, as do the solicitors, who are very heavily represented in the Irish Parliament. So they have a vested interest in building all these little rabbit hutches and packing people, any people, into them. Also we have the major German companies are buying up entire housing estates, vulture funds and so on. Now, so they keep the racket going, and all they need then is people, any people, to fill the rabbit hutches that are built. If they have to ship these people in from abroad, okay, because the government will guarantee the rent. On top of that, there's a HAP system here whereby the government is paying up to €800 a month for people renting, which is great for the landlords because that's €800 to begin with, so they can charge a lot more than that. There's people charging €2,000 for a room in Dublin a month, which is crazy, but you take the €800 out of it, and if you have 6 or 7 people on minimum wage living in that one room, they can survive. Now, nobody wants an apartment block full of people living 10 to a room, but it's not the government's problem, it's the problem of the people trying to live there. We get that in student areas, say in the Holy Lands in Belfast, where irresponsible students drive the locals up the wall, but it's not the government's problem, it's the locals' problem, and they don't really matter. The 3 rules of property are location, location, location. And in the case of Dublin, what's happened is all kinds of companies pouncing off the social goodwill are abusing that. If we take the airlines, Aer Lingus and Ryanair, Aer Lingus, which is a foreign company, it's no longer Irish, they hire these young women from all over Europe as long as they have EU passports, and it's up to them to find their own accommodation wherever they can find it in Dublin. Aer Lingus don't care, it's not their problem, it's their little slaves' problem. The same with Ryanair, which has major hubs all over Europe. Stansted, I believe, is the biggest one. They bring all their cannon fodder to Dublin for a 6-week training course. It's up to the cabin crew to find their own accommodation for that 6 weeks, which is very, very difficult. And it's not Ryanair's problem again if people can't make it. There's always more to come because they're fishing in all the exploited areas of Europe, Cyprus, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and so on. So they've plenty of little lemmings to work for them, and it's up to the lemmings to find their own accommodation. We have the students packing in. We have the legitimate students in universities like Trinity College, where the students' union is only really using them and is not looking to solve the problem of finding students accommodation, of individual students accommodation. If a few students drop out, if a few hundred students drop out, if they have to sleep in tents up in the Phoenix Park, it's not the students' union problem. They're building a career so they can get into Leinster House, as Alex White, a former leader, did, or into RTE as Anya Lawler, Ian Wilson, Joe Duffy, former presidents of the Students' Union, all did. So it's not really their problem at all. Then we have the political parties helping. Well, the Republicans in South Armagh had a big thing in smuggling Vietnamese, dead or alive, into Europe. So we have these people with no morality in the white slave trafficking industry. We have all the prostitutes, transsexual, transvestite, male. They all have to find somewhere to live. To hell with the locals, because the social media people working for big money in Facebook, Twitter and so on need their entertainment. The Twitter and Facebook and similar people working in Dublin, they get their rent subsidised by their employers. So if you're trying to compete for an apartment with them, you cannot compete on price. We have the government, of course, subsidising right across the board, and all kinds of rules and regulations that push out the small landlord, because the government really serves the interest of big business. The Irish government are just really lapdogs for the European Union, the United States of America, Britain, and so on. They just have this cushy little number in Ireland where they can pay themselves a fortune and get to meet Joe Biden or whoever the current Prime Minister of Britain is, or that silly Ursula von der Leyen woman. Then, of course, we have the NGOs who are packing the country with all so-called refugees, very dubious characters, committing, there's been a gang of them committed for sex crimes. None of them get deported. There's no border controls, just amnesty, because the government can't really control anything. The only good thing they're good at really is voting themselves wages. So we have a situation then where the likes of Roisin Murphy and many others fall through the cracks. There was a system in the past to protect people like her, but the current thing is just to keep building, pack people in from everywhere. Then we have the likes of Rory Hearn, who must be some kind of bad karma visited upon us. He ran for the dubious People Before Profit outfit, and he's just preaching these broad brush approaches that have nothing to them, like what a minute university where he works, a secular seminary is what it is, indoctrination cemetery. They actually did a Swifty on their own students during COVID, got them to pay a year's rent, and then told them to work from home. So Rory Hearn and the university, the secular seminary, it's a stretch calling it a university, have big questions to answer themselves. What they've done with Dublin and all of Ireland is they're just pushing demand up and pushing supply up to meet that demand. They're pulling in all these dubious characters. 2% of the population are now Ukrainian, half of them men of military age. The doors have been thrown open. The government can't cope because it has increased demand. Come to Ireland, we'll put you up in a hotel, we'll destroy our tourist industry to keep you in the lap of luxury, and because of CRH, the solicitors and everybody else will keep building like Billio. When we build, that puts money immediately into the economy because builders, suppliers get money, they spend it, and it keeps the economy bubbling over. It's like putting a lot of sugar into tea. It's a hit, but it doesn't really add anything. You have to produce stuff, and the only export stuff Ireland produces, which is busy killing its national herd, is through American multinationals who, when the time is right, will haul anchor and sail away to exploit somewhere else. So we have in Ireland a classic or a not so classic bubble where there's all kinds of problems on supply, demand, there's scammers on every side, and we have the politicians who can only think of the next election and their Swiss bank accounts. We have the civil servants who are really a legacy of the British control of the country, who are not really up to the job. There's very hard decisions have to be made to get housing and to get the economy right, and Rory Hearn and the people in South Armagh who smuggle criminals into the country and who kill Vietnamese people by the score to maximise their own profit, they are part of the problem. They are not part of the solution. And anybody who votes for any of the major parties in Leinster House is also a part of the problem, because they cannot bring a solution. The solution lies outside of them by putting power into the people. If the people don't want to solve this problem, if they're happy with unvetted males coming in, hassling women, raping women, if they're happy with a government that won't deport Angolan sex offenders, well, that's what they get. Until the legal system is radically reformed, until Leinster House, the governing parties, are essentially done away with, until the presidency is called to account, until all the leeches are called to account, Ireland will be stuck in the abyss it's currently in, with these false crises in housing and in other areas. The famous saying is, it's the economy, stupid. It's not the housing or the homelessness. And if all Ireland can do is build horrible little apartments and pull all these dubious characters in with Nazi backgrounds and criminal backgrounds to fill up those apartments, the day of reckoning is pretty obvious, because we're really just building on sand, unlike the Japanese or other people who actually have something between their ears and whatever mush is between the ears of our politicians. So that's it. We'll finish off with Roisin Dove, a famous Irish song. Slán.